I would also like to acknowledge the hardworking Umalusi staff, the behind-the-scenes hardworking and committed people. Special recognitions go to the following people. Director General of the Department of Basic Education, Mr. Matanzi Mamweli, and his team. Dr. Ramoroka from the Department of Higher Education and Training. CEO of the Independent Examinations Board, Mrs. Confidence Dikgole and her team. CEO of the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, Sakai, Mr. Chris Klopper and his team. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of media houses. Ladies and gentlemen, you are warmly welcome to Umalusi this morning. On 15 October 2025, Umalusi informed the nation through a media briefing that the outcomes of the audit of the state of readiness of the assessment bodies, namely the Department of Basic Education, DBE, Department of Higher Education and Training, DHET, Independent Examinations Board, IEB, and the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, Sakai, pointed to the system being ready to conduct, administer, and manage the 2025 end-of-year national examinations. Today, we have convened this briefing to make a pronouncement on the examination results in respect of the following 4 quality assured qualifications: General Education and Training Certificate, Adult Basic Education and Training, assessed by the Department of Higher Education and Training, the IEB and Sakai. NATED Report 190-191, Engineering Studies, and 3, assessed by the DHET. National Certificate Vocational, NCV Level 4, assessed by the DHET. National Senior Certificate, NSC, assessed by the DBE, the IEB, and Sakai. Before I provide an overview in terms of how these examinations were run, it is necessary to update the public on 2 policy developments in relation to NCV levels 2 to 4 and N2 to N3 examinations, both of which are assessed by the DHET. As per the Government Gazette 49518 2025 is the last year of the issuance of the N3 certificates by Umalusi. This because the NATED Report 190-191 N1 to N3 programs entered a phase-out period on 1 January 2024, with 31 December 2023 being the last date of candidate registrations on the programs. This means that from now onwards, Umalusi will no longer issue new N3 certificates. However, the organization will continue to do reissues or replacements of existing certificates where necessary. We want to assure the South African public that the currency of the already issued N3 certificates will not be eroded by these developments. In other words, those certificates remain valid, and the holders of these certificates can use them for employment. With regard to the internalization of the NCV, levels 2 and 3 examinations by the DHET, and the cessation of quality assurance thereof by Umalusi, as previously directed through Government Gazette 53015, Umalusi is pleased to report that the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Mr. Buti Manamela, positively considered the recommendations of Umalusi Council by issuing a new directive dated 17 December 2025. According to the latest directive, no certificates will be issued by Umalusi for learners currently registered for the November 2025 and future examinations for NCV levels 2 and 3. Instead, the DHET will issue a statement of results to confirm learning achievements. Umalusi will continue to externally quality assure and certify NCV level 4 examinations. Returning to today's business, Umalusi has the legislative obligation to subject the examination to its quality assurance processes. The General and Further Education and Training Quality Assurance Act 58 of 2001, as amended, confers a range of powers and functions on Umalusi in respect of the assessments and examinations linked to the qualifications on the sub-framework of qualifications NQF levels 1 to 4. These powers and functions include the external moderation of question papers and institution-based assessments to ensure the maintenance of standards of assessments, audit of the readiness of the system to conduct, administer, and manage the examinations, monitoring of the writing of the examinations across sampled examination centers to determine the credibility of the examinations, participation in marking guidelines, standardization discussions in a selection of subjects to ensure the accuracy and reliability of the marking process, verification of quality of marking in sampled subjects to ensure marking accuracy and reliability, standardization of examination marks to ensure comparability and consistency in learner performance across years, and approval of the release of the learner results. The goal of these quality assurance processes is to ensure that the assessments and examinations are conducted, administered, and managed in accordance with the prescripts of the regulations that govern them, and thereby ensuring the highest credibility and integrity of the Umalusi issued certificates. Umalusi is also pleased that other risk factors such as community protests, load reduction, inclement weather, and so on did not materially affect the smooth running of the examinations. We commend members of society for not using national examinations as leverage for their protest actions. Regrettably, Umalusi has learned that during the examinations process, some candidates became victims of social ills, such as rape, robbery, etc. Umalusi strongly condemns these criminal acts and urges community members and relevant authorities to support all the victims of such barbaric acts in whatever way possible. I would like to express our thanks to every one of the teachers, examiners, moderators, examination monitors, marking verifiers, Umalusi staff, etc., for ensuring the full implementation of the quality assurance framework. Umalusi could not have reached this stage without your professional and administrative assistance. Following the conduct, administration, and management of the above examinations by the 4 assessment bodies, the monitoring thereof by Umalusi, and the standardization of the examination results by the Assessment Standards Committee, ASC, of Umalusi Council, both the assessment bodies and Umalusi presented their reports for the consideration of the Executive Committee, EXCO of Council. The outcomes of the deliberations of the ASC and the decisions of the EXCO of Umalusi Council will be presented shortly by Professor Balim chairperson of Umalusi Council. The external examination results were standardized by the Assessment Standards Committee, ASC of Council, between 18 December 2025 and 5 January 2026. The 15-member committee spent considerable time carefully analyzing numerical data and narrative reports to arrive at standardization decisions by way of consensus for each one of the over 300 subjects presented. The multiple sources of evidence were considered in conjunction with well-established standardization principles and approaches. Thus, Umalusi relied heavily on the ASC members' knowledge and wisdom, gained over a long period of time through experience. ASC members are always willing to sacrifice valuable time during the festive season to ensure the best outcome for the South African learners. Just to remind you, colleagues, the ASC is a council committee of 15 members who are drawn from various universities and research institutions in South Africa. The committee is chaired by Professor Loiso Jita, Dean of the Faculty of Education at the University of the Free State. And his deputy is Professor Mabokang Munapula Mapesela, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and Student Affairs at Rhodes University. As a transparent public entity, Umalusi continued with its firmly established culture of opening itself up for the scrutiny of others during the standardization process. This year, the standardization processes were observed by representatives from 11 national and international organizations. From South Africa, in attendance were senior officials representing Universities South Africa, USF, South African Qualifications Authority, SAQA, South African Council for Educators, SACE, Education Labour Relations Council, ELRC, South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, National Professional Teachers Organizations of South Africa, NAPTOSA, National Teachers Union, NATU, and the South African Onderwys IMI, SAOU. The international observers were representatives from Examinations Council of Eswatini, ECESWA, Uganda National Examinations Board, UNEP, and the Directorate of National Examinations and Assessments, DNEA, of the Namibian Ministry of Education. This category of observers closely scrutinized our standardization processes across all 4 assessment bodies and qualifications. Beyond that, the observers engaged us in a process of reflection on the standardization approaches used. Their overall message was that whereas our systems are different in terms of the approaches, the quality assurance processes converge around the need to ensure the highest credibility and integrity of the certificates issued. Taking from that, we salute members of the Assessment Standards Committee of Umalusi Council for always ensuring that Umalusi truly honors its vision of being a trusted authority in fostering high education standards in general education and further education and training, GFET. Umalusi will forever be indebted to the ASC for always executing its mandate in accordance with the Act, the relevant Umalusi policy, and the approved principles of standardization, which were once again applied consistently across all qualifications and subjects. I would now like to talk briefly about examination malpractices, which have a potential to affect the credibility of examinations. I would like to express Umalusi's serious concern at the unending cases of irregularities that are uncovered on an annual basis. The 2025 Quality Assurance Reports indicates that the phenomenon of group copying affects all qualifications, albeit in varying degrees. At the same time, we remain seriously concerned that particular provinces recur in the reports dealing with such malpractices. We urge all provincial education departments and private assessment bodies to tighten their systems to protect the overall credibility of the examinations. And that goes for all assessment bodies, including the DHET. Concerning the phenomenon of disallowing candidates from writing the examinations, commonly known as gatekeeping or culling, to improve the pass rate at school level, Umalusi commends the intervention of the Department of Basic Education in dealing with this. We continue to urge learners and parents and guardians to report this unlawful incident to the relevant authorities. The department has done a lot of justice in this regard in these examinations. Regarding candidates who cheated in the examinations, I want to remind them that cheating does not pay, by quoting from a court judgment in the matter brought by Rogers Mkonto and 62 learners from a number of schools in the Mpumalanga province who sat for their NSC examinations during October-November 2022. Delivering his judgment in the Mpumalanga Division of the High Court on the 19th of November 2025, exactly 31 days ago, in which the Minister of Basic Education and Umalusi were cited as first and fifth respondents, respectively, Deputy Judge President Rachi Vumo, DJP, said at paragraph 55, at the heart of the matter are irregularities by learners in the matric examination, arguably the most important examination that learners in schools across South Africa will undertake during their schooling. To maintain the integrity of the matriculation examination and its results, all necessary steps must be taken carefully to identify and eliminate all irregularities in its administration. Allowing irregularities in the matric examination process may encourage learners to resort to unlawful means to obtain their matric certification, rather than through honest, hard work and study. Hard work and diligent study remain the keys to obtaining a matric certificate. At paragraph 56, the Honorable Judge says, and I read, any irregularity that is proved should be frowned upon and corrected. Umalusi is pleased with the fact that the court has finally agreed with the sanctions meted against the implicated candidates and that the matter has been put to bed. On the 11th of December 2025, the Minister of Basic Education, Mesiviwe Kwahube, informed the nation that there had been a breach in connection with the NSC Mathematics Papers 1 and 2, Physical Sciences Papers 1 and 2, English Home Language Papers 1 to 3 examinations. Consequently, the National Investigation Task Team, NITT, was established immediately to independently investigate and spread of the breach and report the findings to Umalusi. The NITT is made up of 9 members, with Umalusi assuming an observer status. Professor Chika Sehule chairs the NITT, and his deputy is Mr. Brian Schroeder. The other members of the NITT are equally respected leaders and scholars in the field of education. They have also played various leadership roles nationally and internationally. I have the pleasure to inform you that Professor Sehule and Mr. Schroeder presented the report of the NITT to the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council on 6 January 2026. Without going into specifics, because we have been alerted that the NITT, along with the Minister of Basic Education, will later today publicly release the findings. The overall conclusion of the investigation is that the leak was limited to the 3 subjects or 7 papers mentioned already, and that the leak was contained to around 40 candidates in 7 examination centers in the Pretoria area. Considering that the report singles out about 40 candidates out of a total population of 600,000 who wrote the examination in the 3 subjects. To be specific, those who wrote physical sciences were 204,957. Mathematics, 254,413. English home language, 135,090 across the country. Umalusi wants to assure the public that the breach was localized and therefore cannot dent the overall credibility of the 2025 NSE results. The approval statement to be read by the chairperson of council will clearly explain how the results of the implicated candidates will be dealt with. While the number of implicated learners currently stands at around 40, there will be consequences for anyone who is not included in the number. Now, should they be discovered later on? I want to repeat. While the number of implicated learners currently stands at around 40, there will be consequence for anyone who is not included in the number, should they be discovered later on. This is because the work of the NITT is ongoing. Umalusi is empowered by Section 21, subsections 2, 3, and 4 of the amended Genfecwa Act to cancel a certificate after it has been issued upon discovery of irregularities. And I quote, "The council may cancel a certificate that has been issued to a learner if on investigation the council found that the learner has not met the requirements for the qualification. The council may, by notice in writing, direct a learner whose certificate has been cancelled to return the certificate to the council within 3 weeks after such notice. Any person who fails to comply with such notice is guilty of an offence and liable of conviction to a fine or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 6 months." So the message is that if you cheated in this examination and you are found out later on, you'll have to return the certificate, failing which you'll be imprisoned. That is the message. As a civil engineer, Professor Eunice Balin, chairperson of Umalusi Council, always reminds us that fail-safe systems exist nowhere in the world. That's what Prof says. I'm quoting him in his presence. Using concrete bridges as an example, that is his area of specialization. He says engineers design bridges not to collapse, so you can drive safely there. But should they collapse, they must be safe when it happens. This suggests that early detection is key. Taking from this, we can confidently say that just like bridges, the DBE systems work exactly as they were supposed to do, as they were designed to do, to detect, to isolate, to investigate, and to address the irregularity. Right. For this reason, Umalusi applauds the DBE for the swiftness with which they dealt with the breach. They urgently put together a repeatable team of investigators to ensure that work gets done throughout the December holidays and that the report is submitted for consideration by Umalusi Council on 6 January 2026. These colleagues worked throughout the festive season, between Christmas and New Year, when some people were resting and on holiday at the beaches. Clearly, this is true public accountability. What has happened here is true public accountability. Colleagues, as I conclude, working collaboratively, with sister Quality Council, Council on Higher Education, Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, and the South African Qualifications Authority, Umalusi has been on a campaign trail to warn the public against falling prey to unaccredited educational institutions to cap the practice. Since this is that time of the year when thousands of students will be looking for an opportunity to pursue further education, we thought it is important to remind students about the importance of verifying the accreditation status of any institution that they are interested in pursuing further studies with. That's very important. Finally, I would like to express my warmest, sincerest, and heartfelt congratulations to the class of 2025, parents and guardians, teachers and lecturers for delivering them to the stage. I thank you. Mr. Lipota?
Okay, so thank you very much, CEO. Let's do the...
You just move the microphones.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Here is a small one.
Okay, thank you, CEO. So we will now hand over to the chairperson of Umalusi Council to read the approval statement. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Bring it here, brother. Hello. You're not done yet? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lipota, and colleagues. Warm greetings to the CEO of Umalusi, who has just read a statement. Officials of the Umalusi team, the assessment bodies, Department of Basic Education, DHET, IEB, and Sakai. Thank you for being here. Members of the media, of course, and special greetings to the class of 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, Umalusi is South Africa's Quality Council for General and Further Education and Training. Its mandate is outlined in the National Qualifications Framework Act number 67 of 2008, as amended, and the General and Further Education and Training Quality Assurance Act as amended. The two acts assign to Umalusi a range of powers and functions, including assuring the quality of qualifications that fall within the General and Further Education and Training Qualifications sub-framework, that is on levels 1 to 4 of the NQF. The four qualifications are the National Senior Certificate, so-called NSC, the National Certificate Vocational, the NCV, and in this case only level 4, of course. NATED Report 190 and 91 Engineering Studies N3, and Dr. Akomets has explained the status of that qualification. The General Education and Training Certificate for Adult Basic Education and Training, what is referred to as GETC ABAT. These are qualifications for which Umalusi is legislatively obliged to assure quality. Umalusi draws its mandate in relation to the approval of the release of results from Section 17A, 5B of the amended GenFEDCO Act. The section reads as follows: the Council must, with the concurrence of the Director General and after consultation with the relevant assessment body or education institution, approve the publication of the results of learners if the Council is satisfied that the assessment body or education institution has conducted the assessment free from any irregularity that may jeopardize the integrity of the assessment or its outcomes, complied with the requirements prescribed by the Council for conducting assessments, applied the standards prescribed by the Council with which a learner is required to comply in order to obtain a certificate, and complied with every other condition determined by the Council. In line with these provisions, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council met on the 6th and the 8th of January 2026 to consider detailed reports from Umalusi and the four assessment bodies on the conduct, administration and management of the 2025 October-November NCV, NSC, NSC NCV Level 4, Nated Report 190-191, N3, and the GETC ABET examinations by the respective assessment bodies. This approval statement brings together decisions taken at different stages of the quality assurance cycle of Umalusi. As such, it marks Umalusi Council's confirmation that the assessment leading to certification in public and private schools, adult education centers, and technical and vocational education and training colleges were of the required standard across all qualifications. One of the quality assurance processes that precedes EXCO's approval meeting is standardization of the examination marks. The process was conducted by the Assessment Standards Committee, as Dr. Akumetse has mentioned, of the Umalusi Council, between the 18th of December and the 5th of January. 18th of December 2025, 5th of January 2026. In standardizing examination marks, the ASC relied on well-established standardization principles and approaches, which are supported by numerical evidence and narrative reports. One matter worthy of explaining is that standardization is done through statistical adjustment of mark distributions, not individual learner marks. That's an important point. And that the process is applied only to the external examination marks. Approximately 1,026,000 candidates wrote the examinations across the different qualifications that I've mentioned and across the assessment bodies. In terms of breakdown, and a table which you will receive, you don't need to record these numbers. There's a table which shows that 927,000 candidates took the NSC exam, which is by far the largest proportion of the total candidature. The more than 1 million candidates wrote the examinations at about 9,400 examination centers, spread across 4 assessment bodies, and again this is shown in the distribution table that you will receive. The information in a table again shows that 307 subjects were examined across the 4 qualifications and assessment bodies, and the distribution across the different assessment bodies is shown in the data or information table that you will receive. In the next section, I will present the approval decisions of EXCO, of Council, for each of the assessment bodies, starting with the results for the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, SACAI. Thereafter, I will move on to the results of the Independent Examination Board, IB, followed by those of the Department of Higher Education and Training, and then conclude with the results of the Department of Basic Education. Colleagues, as I read these statements, you'll recognize a repetitiveness. Unfortunately, it's necessary for completeness of the process. Please bear with me. So starting with SACAI, the SACAI administered its GETC ABET examinations to 217 candidates at 21 examination centers. There were 7 learning areas resulted, 6 learning areas had their results accepted in the raw form, and 1 was adjusted mainly upwards. The approval statement for the release of the SACAI GETC ABET results reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered in accordance with the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute policy on the conduct, administration, and management of examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 GETC ABET examinations administered by SACAI. EXCO of Council approves the release of the SACAI November 2025 GETC ABET examination results. Regarding identified irregularities, the EXCO of Council endorses the SACAI's recommendation to withhold the results of candidates who are implicated in the alleged irregularities, including acts of dishonesty. The SACAI is required to address the Directors for Compliance and Improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and submit an improvement plan by the 13th of March 2026. Exco of Council commends the Sakai for conducting a successful examination. Turning to the standardization of the NSC results for the Sakai, Sakai's NSC examinations were administered in 24 subjects to 6,168 candidates at 83 examination centers. Based on the evidence presented during standardization process, the ASC arrived at the following decisions. Raw marks were accepted for 9 subjects. The results in 12 subjects, or about 50% of them, were adjusted mainly upwards. The results in the remaining 3 subjects were adjusted mainly downwards. And the approval statements for the Sakai's NSC results reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with regulations pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of the National Senior Certificate Examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 National Senior Certificate Examinations administered by Sakai. Exco of Council approves the release of the Sakai November 2025 NSC examination results. Regarding identified irregularities, the Exco of Council endorses the Sakai's recommendation to withhold the results of candidates who are implicated in the alleged irregularities, including acts of dishonesty. Sakai is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and submit an improvement plan by the 13th of March 2026. Exco of Council commends Sakai for conducting a successful examination. The details of the actual standardization decisions at qualification and subject levels are provided in the statement that you will receive as annexures. In addition to being published on the Umalusi website for wider reach, the statement will be made available to you immediately after this briefing. Turning to standardization and approval decisions for the IEB, and in regard to the GETC ABET results of the IEB, the IEB's GETC ABET examinations were administered in 7 learning areas to 469 candidates at 54 examination centers. The results were standardized as follows. The raw marks were accepted for 4 of the learning areas. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 1 learning area, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 2 learning areas. And the approval statement for the release of the IEB's GTC ABET results reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered in accordance with the IEB's policy on the conduct, administration and management of examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 GETC ABET examinations administered by the IEB. Exco approves the release of the IEB November 2025 GETC ABET examination results. Regarding identified irregularities, the Exco of Council advises the IEB to withhold the results of candidates who are implicated in the alleged irregularities, including acts of dishonesty. The IEB is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and submit an improvement plan by 13th March 2026. Exco of Council commends the IEB for conducting a successful examination. In regard to standardization of the NSC results for the IEB, the IEB administered NSC examinations to 17,414 candidates, of which 16,063 were full-time, 1,351 were part-time, at 256 examination centers. Of the 58 subjects results that were presented to the ASC for standardization, Raw marks were accepted in 47 of the subjects, that's 81% of the subjects. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 7 subjects, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 4 subjects. Perhaps I should just explain, and I should have done this earlier, why these adjustment statements are important. Remember, the fundamental, the first principal question of standardization is to ask, why should we not accept the raw results? We need reasons for not accepting the raw results. And when we accept a larger proportion of raw results, that points to a system that is settled, doing reasonably well, and the results, the examinations and the examination processes are predictable, reproducible, and that's important for us. So 81% of the subjects in the IEB system were accepted at the raw level. And again, the detail of that information will be in the pack that you receive. The approval statement for the release of the IEB's NSC results reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the regulations pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of the National Senior Certificate Examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 NSC examinations administered by the IEB. EXCO Council therefore approves the release of the IEB November 2025 National Senior Certificate Examination results. Regarding identified irregularities, the EXCO Council endorses the IEB's recommendation to withhold the results of candidates who are implicated in the alleged irregularities, including acts of dishonesty. The IEB is required to address the directors for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and submit an improvement plan by the 13th of March 2026. EXCO of Council commends the IEB for conducting a successful examination. I now turn to the standardization and approval decisions for the DHET examinations. And in the first case, the GATC ABET results of the Department of Education and Training. The DHET's GTC ABET examinations were written by 38,220 candidates at 1,519 examination centers countrywide. Of the 26 learning areas results presented, the following standardization decisions were made. 13 learning areas had the raw marks accepted. 5 learning areas were adjusted mainly upwards, and 8 learning areas were adjusted mainly downwards. The approval statement for the release of the GTC ABET results of the DHET then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the national policy pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of the examination of colleges, established, declared or registered in terms of Continuing Education and Training Act. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 GETC ABET examinations as administered by the DHET. EXCO of Council approves the release of the DHET November 2025 GETC ABET examination results. Regarding identified irregularities, EXCO of Council endorses the DHET's recommendation to withhold the results of candidates who are implicated in the alleged irregularities, including acts of dishonesty. DHET should ensure that all irregularities are thoroughly investigated and that a full report is provided to Umalusi for verification and approval within a reasonable time frame. The DHET is required to address the directors for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and submit an improvement plan by the 13th of March 2026. EXCO of Council commends the DHET for conducting a successful examination. If we now turn to the NCV levels 4 results of the DHET, The NCV Level 4 examinations were written by 36,961 candidates at 248 examination centers. And the standardization decisions arrived at was follows. Raw marks were accepted for 53 of the subjects. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 24 subjects, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 15 subjects. And I don't think I mentioned that sums to 92 subjects that were standardized. The approval statement for the L4 is DHET's NCV L4 results reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the national policy pertaining to the conduct, administration, and management of the examinations of colleges, established, declared, or registered in terms of Continuing Education and Training Act 2006. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 NCV Level 4 examinations administered by the DHET. EXCO of Council approves the release of the DHET November 2025 NCV Level 4 examination results. Regarding identified irregularities, the EXCO of Council endorses the DHET's recommendation to withhold the results of candidates who are implicated in the alleged irregularities, including acts of dishonesty. DHET should ensure that all irregularities are thoroughly investigated and that a full report is provided to Umalusi for verification and approval within a reasonable time frame. Umalusi acknowledges the progress made by the DHET to uphold the integrity and credibility of the NCV Level 4 examinations. However, the current challenges remain critical areas of concern. Non-compliance with ICAS instructions at various colleges. Somebody will have to remind me what ICAS means. I know what it means. Yeah. Internal continual assessments. Yeah. Decrease in the number of candidates who wrote per subject, and a high number of colleges implicated in the ISAT irregularities. That is the integrated summative assessment. Okay, that's the assessments that happens at the colleges and schools. The DHET is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and submit the improvement plan by the 13th of March 2026. EXCO of Council commends the DHET for conducting a successful examination and requires that the DHET takes the necessary steps to ensure the continuous improvement in the integrity of the NCV Level 4 qualification. Turning to the standardization of the N3 results for the DHET, in 2025, the DHET administered the N3 examinations to 23,847 candidates at 321 examination centers. The following decisions were taken for the 25 instructional offerings. Raw marks were accepted for 11 of the subjects. Mainly upward adjustments were made in one subject, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 13 subjects. The approval statement for the release of the DHET's N3 results then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of EXCO of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the national policy pertaining to the conduct, administration, and management of the examinations of colleges, established, declared, or registered in terms of Continuing Education and Training Act 2006. The irregularities identified during the writing of the exams were not systemic and therefore did not compromise the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 NATED Report 190-191 Engineering Studies N3 examinations administered by the DHET. EXCO of Council approves the release of the DHET November NATED Report 190-191 Engineering Studies N3 examination results. Regarding identified irregularities, EXCO of Council endorses the DHET's recommendation to withhold the results of candidates who are implicated in the alleged irregularities, including acts of dishonesty. The DHET should ensure that all irregularities are thoroughly investigated and that a full report is provided to Umalusi for verification and approval within a reasonable time frame. EXCO of Council commends the DHET for conducting a successful examination. Colleagues, in this final section of a statement, we present the standardization and approval decisions in respect of the National Senior Certificate Examinations administered by the DBE. In this case, a total of 903,561 candidates, of which 766,543 were full-time and 137,018 part-time students, wrote the NSC examination under the DBE system. The candidates were distributed across 6,955 examination centers throughout the country. The DBE presented results of 68 subjects for standardization, and after careful analysis of the numerical evidence and narrative reports presented, the AC arrived at the following decisions. The raw marks were accepted for 56 of these subjects, that's just over 82%. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 7 subjects, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 5 subjects. A year-on-year comparison shows a clear pattern of an upward trend in the number of DBE subjects for which raw marks were accepted over the last 5 years. This is a clear sign that the system continues to produce consistent and reliable results over time. The approval statements for the DBE's NSC results then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, including the report of the National Investigation Task Team, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the regulations pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of the National Senior Certificate Examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2025 NSC examinations administered by the Department of Basic Education. EXCO of Council approves the release of the DBE November 2025 NSC examination results. Regarding the identified irregularities, the EXCO of Council endorses the DBE's recommendation to withhold the results of candidates who are implicated in alleged irregularities, including acts of dishonesty. DBE is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and to submit an improvement plan by the 13th of March 2026. EXCO of Council commends the DBE for conducting a successful examination on such a large scale. In summary then, the 2025 end-of-year national examinations were administered in over 300 subjects at around 9,400 examination centers. The total number of candidates approximately 1,026,000 candidates who were distributed across 4 assessment bodies and 4 qualifications. The NSC candidates contributed 90.3% or around 927,000 of the total. During the conduct of its quality assurance work from start to finish, Umalusi uncovered specific areas of weakness that the Council has directed the relevant assessment bodies to put in place systems to strengthen these areas. While the issues will be covered in the assessment body specific composite reports, detailing areas of best practice, areas of non-compliance and directives for compliance and improvement, it is worth mentioning that Umalusi is seriously concerned about the recurrence of areas of non-compliance with regulations pertaining to internal assessment. That's what I refer to as the ICAS and the ISET assessments, particularly in the technical and vocational education and training colleges, that's the TVET colleges. Following repeated lapses in the conduct, administration and management of assessment and examinations by the DHET, the Executive Committee of the Umalusi Council directed that the DHET be placed under close monitoring during 2025. Whereas the DHET has improved in some areas, there are areas that still need to be tightened up. In this regard, the DHET has been directed to work closely with Umalusi to direct the areas in question to avoid their recurrence. Allow me a few concluding comments. Umalusi Council congratulates all the assessment bodies for successfully conducting, administering and managing the 2025 end-of-year examinations. As evidenced by the numbers presented, the examination system is large and complex. I want to repeat what we have said before. It's not an easy task to ensure that each one of the over 1 million candidates across over 9,400 examination centers receives the correct question paper at the right time and in the correct venue. Individual scripts are collected, marked, marks are verified before being transferred into the computer systems, and then submitted to Umalusi for standardization purposes. Standardization decisions are implemented on the system, and that learners are resulted in a timely manner. All this is done with proper attention to the integrity of the process. This is certainly most deserving of our general national commendation. Umalusi Council congratulates the class of 2025 who have succeeded in these examinations. Words of appreciation are also due to their teachers, their parents, their guardians, and all those who have supported the learners throughout their journey, including the maintenance and cleaning staff at our schools and colleges, the taxi and other public and private transport drivers who took care in bringing our learners to school, and the community members who show concern for the learning of our children. We thank all role players for ushering the class of 2025 to this important day. To those learners who have not succeeded, please don't give up. Work harder and you will do better in this year's examinations. I'm equally grateful to the members of the Assessment Standards Committee and the Executive Committee of Council for investing their time and effort, extracting meaning out of a large amount of data available for analysis to inform their respective decisions. Particularly, the ASC is always willing to sacrifice their time when other citizens are enjoying the Christmas and New Year break with friends and families, to ensure that the best outcomes are achieved for South African learners. I also thank the CEO of Umalusi, his management team and staff for the excellent work that they continue to do behind the scenes. The Umalusi team has given so freely and so generously of their time, energy and wisdom to ensure that Umalusi remains a trusted authority in fostering high educational standards in general and further education and training. Nobody doubts what we do in the service of every single young person in this country who chooses to walk the path of building their lives through education. Nobody is ever hesitant about the fact that the best service we can do to each of these young people is to give them a certificate that has integrity and credibility. I wish everyone the best for 2026. Thank you very much.
Okay, so colleagues, that then brings us to the end of the approval statement. I think in summary, Umalusi Council says, except for the results of the learners indicated in irregularities, assessment bodies are free to release the results of everybody else. So we are now going to open the floor for discussion. You turn on your mic, and when it turns red, that means you're the first one to speak, and you introduce yourself and you go ahead. Can I see blue, green mics? And then I'll tell. Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
It appears that it's very clear, and it's for that reason that I don't see any hands. Shoni, you must turn your mic on. So when it's green, you okay. So that means you can go ahead.
Okay. Shoni Mtimkulu from ENCA. I think two questions. The first one is just for clarity, and I suppose this will go to the minister as well. In terms of the numbers for the breach that happened last year, I think initially we were at 26 when it was initially reported, but I think I heard the CEO talking about 40. Can we just get clarity on that? And also, I understand that it's a small number compared to those who wrote, but still, just how concerning is it that you are getting these incidences, as the CEO said, every year now, or almost every year, there's some other situation that's happening, and now it's even involving your own or the DBE's own employees, where they are seeming to assist this situation of breaches, leaks, cheating, whatever we want to call it. And then my other question is on the TVET colleges and the compliance issues. There's a big push to make TVET colleges a viable option for the number of applicants, the hundreds and thousands of applicants that want to go into university. But is it not concerning that we are having these issues now where some TVET colleges are not complying? Does that not throw credibility away from TVET colleges when they are not complying with what they're supposed to be complying with? Or I wouldn't want to go there if I'm hearing all of these issues that you raise now about compliance.
Thank you. Can I see the second red mic? Okay, well, we're still thinking. Okay, I see Memochema.
Good day, Tsepiso Machema. I'm a freelance writer. Just adding to what Hloni was asking regarding the yearly incidents, breaches that happen. From a security measure, what is in place to ensure that these kind of things do not actually happen? If the people who are in the departments, who are the authorities, are able to do this, what actually are the security measures that are in place? Thank you.
Okay, let's allow the panelists to respond to the questions while we're still trying to make things crystallize in our minds. Over to you.
Shall I try?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. On the issue of the breach and numbers, and I think you're correct, that matter will be raised with the minister as well. The increase from 26 to 40 emerged out of the continued investigation of the team that was appointed to look at this. And as it emerged, it is possible that 40 will grow a little bit as well. Because as we said, the investigation will continue. The important point to make is the one that the CEO made, and that is, even if examination results are released and somebody is found later to have been participating, Umalusi and the DBE will certainly be withdrawing that certificate. I think the point is that these breaches must be pursued relentlessly. So the number grew as a result of the more thorough and deeper investigation. On the issue of the systems and security measures that are in place, and I do want to correct a point you made, we've not actually had, until 2025, we haven't had leaks for the last 4 years. And that is the point that the CEO was making with the civil engineering analogy. And that is, you set up a system so that the processes are able to detect these things. And in fact, to commend the DBE, after a spate of a number of leaks, systems were put in place to ensure that this doesn't happen. To great expense to the taxpayer. Those systems cost money, and the taxpayer pays for them. But it is necessary to ensure credibility. This leak took us by surprise, mainly because, of course, I think it's the first time we've had an internal leak. And so clearly we need to put systems and processes in place that will attend to those kind of problems. I think, as we say, the systems in place, we continuously, as we find breaches, monitor and improve the system. And that's the conversation that will come out. And in fact, the investigating team are tasked with making recommendations to ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen in the future. The issue of the TVET colleges, I mean, I don't want, your question sounded as though you were arguing that it is a new idea that the TVET colleges should be an alternative. It's not a new idea. The TVET colleges have always been aimed at an important development area for learning in our country. The breaches that we mention relate to the administration of examinations. This is not for a minute to say that the sector and all the colleges are in collapse. The department administers these colleges and in large measure administers them well enough for us to approve the results, including the assessment. There are areas we're concerned about. Remember, this is also a sector where there are a number of both private and public colleges. And our statement relates to both private and public colleges. And the overall management of the system is important. But you're also correct to say that it is necessary to address these breaches in order to ensure that the quality of education that happens at these colleges is up to scratch. And we've been assured through our close monitoring that the DHET is putting shoulder to the wheel to ensure that that the system improves. Yeah. CEO, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to add, and I'm not going to say anything different from what Prof. Balim has said. The DBE situation was very sad for everybody, and you know what the minister said, and you have heard the DG pronounce on this matter. It is unprecedented that you have a leakage happening in the organization that is supposed to coordinate. And this amplifies the fact that the system is as strong as the people you use. I mean, as the people who work there. They have to be trustworthy. And if one person chooses to be unfaithful, it affects everybody. It's very unfortunate. We are very sad about it. But what should give us comfort is the fact that there's been swift action taken in terms of the culprits. There's been swift action taken in terms of identifying where the problem is, to the extent that we are even able to approve the results as things stand. And that the report that we have received from the NITT is interim. It means that there's going to be further work. And should people be identified who are culprits, they'll also be brought to book. Yeah, I think it is enough to say that. Now, Sonia, about trusting the TVET colleges. Trust the TVET colleges. I want to say that to you. Go to the TVET colleges and study there. Take your children there. Because the quality assurer has been able to sift the things that are irregular and the things that are regular. Hence the approval statement that has been given by Prof. Balim. We're running a very huge system of more than 1 million learners. One has to expect that there'll be areas that are problematic. But the strength of the system is shown by the fact that we are able to pronounce on those areas, and we say the necessary corrective measures must be taken. We are not sweeping anything under the carpet. Now, having said that, all the assessment bodies have been given the date by which they have to submit their action plans and say to us, in terms of the areas of non-compliance that we have identified, this is what we are going to do, and these are the timelines. And they'll be monitoring that throughout the year and submitting reports to Umalusi. And if I were to talk to what Prof. Balim spoke about on ISET and ICAS, the DHET has established protocols on ISET and ICAS, which protocols also include the fact that they have to monitor the institutions in terms of implementing ICAS and ISET. And Umalusi, as a quality assurance body, will be monitoring whether that is done or not. Now, I'm saying we have to have confidence in our education system because there are checks and balances. And let me use this illustration that I used in a private meeting to say we sweep nothing under the carpet. Because if we were to sweep anything under the carpet is going to be uneven. It's going to show that there's something that is being hidden here. Nothing is swept under the carpet in the South African education system. We pronounce, and the necessary corrective remedial measures have to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, CEO. Let's see.
Thank you. Let's see if we have further hands. Ntabi, can you just indicate if we do have questions from the digitals? Nothing. So it appears to me that this has been as clear as it can possibly be. I'm going to check for the last time. Do you have anything? First row? No? Cloney, you want to come back? Elise? Prega? Nothing? Okay. Okay, Prega and Cloney?
Yeah, sorry, just quick one. It's Prega from News 24. Just wanted to check those 40 implicated candidates. Their results will obviously be withheld, right? It's more of a rhetorical question.
Yeah. Correct.
All right.
Okay, Cloney?
Yeah, Shonim Timkul from ENCA again. Just on the 40 again, does Umalusi take other action besides the withholding of the results? Is there anything specific that you take, or is it left to the Department of Education?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the department will finally decide on this matter in terms of the sanctions that the students have to receive through the National Irregularities Committee of the department, and they'll favor Umalusi with a report. It is not in our space to give those sanctions, but the sanctions are given by the department. The sanctions may go something like this. It may say the students are banned from writing examinations for 2 years, 3 years, so that also what would happen is that we'll inform other assessment bodies so that the student does not hop onto another assessment body system and go undetected. So the system is talking to itself in terms of informing others. But that will be decided by the department.
Okay. I think we have exhausted all the hands, and I see the DG is ready to go because they are also going to be briefing the media at 1 o'clock. But what this means now is what remains is for us to thank the chairperson of council, the CEO of Umalusi, and media houses represented here for honoring this. Thank you very much. We are available for one-on-ones if you do want to check this or that. But before you go, because we are a public entity, we do invite everybody to grab something. Lunch is served. Thank you very much, colleagues. That brings us to the conclusion of the briefing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's quick.